Now, on the 6th of July, Bethmann-Hollweg confirmed the blank cheque that, come what may, with the weaknesses of France and Russia, that the Germans would stand by their Austrian ally no matter what. Now, on the 9th of July, however, the Austrians still hadn't done anything, and the Germans were worried about the delay and were wondering why Austria hadn't done anything. And so, worried by the Austro-Hungarian delay, in Hanover an ultimatum, the Germans then threaten that they'll end the alliance with Austria unless the Austrians do something about the assassination. And so we have here the words of Tchaikovsky, the ambassador to Austria-Hungary. Further negotiations with Serbia would be a confession of weakness. And so the Germans wanted the ultimatum to be handed over as soon as possible. Now, German and Austro-Hungarian senior officials are deliberately then sent on holiday so as not to alert France, Russia and Britain, as Europe is watching the Germans and Austro-Hungarians like hawks. And so the Germans and Austro-Hungarians deliberately send senior officials away on holiday, and that reassures Europe that war's unlikely, because otherwise why would these officials go on holiday? Now, on the 23rd of July, the ultimatum is given. Now, Franz Joseph, the aging emperor, Franz Joseph is a fascinating chap. When young, he was keen on military glory until he actually saw a battlefield, and he was horrified by it. And he decided that he would devote his lifetime to peace. This aging emperor is, however, really losing his grip on power. He's an old man, and he looks at the ultimatum that his government's written, and he says, Russia will never accept this. This will cause a big war. Now, the British Foreign Secretary, Grey, and the Russian Foreign Secretary, a man called Sazonarov, begged for mediation and for time and for a delay. Grey asked Serbia to let itself be occupied and then to appeal for mediation. And so that's where the British are coming from. The British actually do go to Serbia and say, look, can't you just let the Austrians occupy your country? The Serbs are rather surprised to be told this is going to be necessary. However, the world is convinced that the ultimatum, which is an incredibly harsh document, and it is an incredibly harsh document to be given to a sovereign power, the Serbs stun the world by accepting the ultimatum, except for one part of the ultimatum. Now, the Austrian ultimatum included the demand that they conduct the judicial inquiry into the murder. Now, this breached Serbian law and the constitution. And so the Serbs say, look, apart from the fact that we don't want you to run the judicial inquiry, we'll accept all the terms of the ultimatum. The world is shocked that any sovereign nation would do so, and it's seen as a remarkable concession to overbearing demands. The Serbs also offered to accept mediation from the great powers or the International Court of The Hague. And so the Serbs, in many ways, bend over backward to avoid war and to try and meet the Austrians' demands for vengeance and for recompense after the assassination. On the 27th of July, Wiesner, the Austro-Hungarian official who is investigating the assassination, concluded that the Serbian state was not to blame, and that the Serbian state in itself was actually innocent of the assassination. Now, Count Berthold, the Austro-Hungarian foreign minister, then deliberately suppresses the information so that the emperor doesn't find out about it, knowing that this would undermine their casus belli, their cause for war. Now, Tsar Nicholas II begs his cousin Wilhelm II, Kaiser of Germany, to stop the war. The Kaiser is jubilant that the Russians are begging for the war to be avoided and says that this is a confession of weakness, and it actually encourages the Germans to push for war. We have here the words of Grey, the British Foreign Secretary. If war breaks out, it will be the greatest catastrophe the world has ever seen. The next day, the Russians mobilise. But mobilisation doesn't mean war. They had real discussions about whether to just mobilise their army against the Austrians, or both against the Austrians and the Germans. The problem is that once they've made a decision, they have to stick with it. They can't change. And so if they just mobilise against the Austrians and the Germans get involved in the war, they'll be powerless to defend themselves. They decided to go for general mobilisation, but they are keen to stress that their troops are not crossing the border. They are merely getting themselves ready for war. On the 29th of July, Britain actually says that it might become involved in war. Now, Germany panics at this. They hadn't allowed for the fact that Britain might get involved in the conflict. And then now Germany tries to make Austria-Hungary back down. Unfortunately, it's too late. The war has already begun between the Austrians and the Serbs, and Belgrade is already burning under Austrian artillery. Now, to try and keep the British out of the war, Bethmann-Hollweg told Grey that if Britain stayed out, they could guarantee the territorial integrity of Belgium and France once Germany had won the war. And this rather stunned the British, because at the moment the war is just between Austria-Hungary and Serbia, with Russia and Germany getting involved in the argument, but not yet the fighting. And the Germans have just turned around to the British and said, oh, we guarantee the territorial integrity of Belgium. This really stuns the British, who are there going, who was talking about Belgium in the first place? Just what are you planning? And he also said that they'd guarantee the territorial integrity of France, but he didn't say that they'd guarantee the integrity of their empires, and did suggest that Belgium and France might lose their empires after Germany has won the war, which again is surprising the British, as the Belgians and the French are not at war. Now, on the 30th of July, the German foreign minister, a man called Jagour, told Sir Edward Goshen, the British ambassador to Germany, that if Germany mobilises, France will be attacked. The Germans have no mobilisation plan that doesn't involve instantly attacking the French. And we got here the words of Goshen. He regretted this, as he knew France did not desire war, but it was a military necessity. Now, Austria-Hungary still hasn't mobilised. Their standing army was sufficient to deal with the Serbs, and so they haven't actually mobilised their army or gone to war with Russia. So Russia has mobilised, Austria-Hungary has not. Austria has attacked the Serbs, but the two countries are not at war. Now, Moltke is terrified that the Kaiser will back down, as it is still possible to stop the First World War at this stage. Now, he bullies Austria-Hungary into mobilising. Germany also mobilises and sends insulting messages to the French. They say it must guarantee their own neutrality in the German-Russian war and hand over the great fortresses of Verdun and Toul as guarantees of French good behaviour. Now, France refused, but said it would stay out if it could. The British offered the Germans that they could keep the French neutral. Now, that's an extraordinary promise. How the British thought they had the power to keep the French out of a German-Austrian-Russian war, God only knows. But the British say, look, if this will stop a war, we will keep the French out. Now, the Kaiser now tries to stop the war and phones the commander of the 16th German Division and orders it not to enter Luxembourg. But Moltke stopped him. Your Majesty, he said, it cannot be done. And he physically stopped the Emperor from phoning the German army to make them cross over into Luxembourg. On the 1st of August, Austria-Hungary tried to negotiate a lasting peace with Russia and Serbia, as it didn't want war with Russia. And in fact, it didn't go to war with Russia until the 6th, after the Germans had insisted. We have here the words of Berthold, the Austro-Hungarian ambassador to Russia. Between us and Russia, there is only a great misunderstanding. And so why did Britain get involved in the First World War?